Today we're going to be working on Algebra I, J.3, solve one-step linear equations, which is code TXJ. So in all of these, we're going to be using one step in order to solve. Make sure you have a calculator because as you can see, there will be decimal problems. Keep in mind when we solve one-step equations, it's important to remember your inverse operations. So what I mean by that is inverse operations are plus and minus, and also multiplication and division. So anytime you're trying to get that variable by itself, you're going to use the inverse operation or the opposite. So in this first one, you can see we want the W by itself. We are going to use the opposite of minus, and we are going to add 1.61 to both sides. When we add it to the left side, it cancels out. In my calculator, I'm going to type 13.01 plus 1.61, and I get 14.62. And that's what I'll be typing in the box. 14.62. We'll submit that and move on to the next one. Again, doing inverse operations. When you see a fraction, it means division. So in this problem, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 4. On the left side, it cancels out and I get just the C. And on the right side is the number 12. So I'm going to type in 12, the box. Okay, we're still moving on. I'm just going to go ahead and clear my screen, and we're going to again do inverse operations. Since this says divide by 2, we are going to times both sides with 2. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 1.39 times 2, and I get 2.78. So in the box, 2.78. I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen again. I've got plus 8, so on both sides, I'm going to subtract 8. When we subtract 8 on the left side, it cancels out. When we do 10 minus 8 on the right side, we get an answer of 2. So we're going to type 2 in the box. Again, they're telling us to divide by 2, so we're going to multiply by 2. If you need to see what this looks like, we're going to go ahead and multiply the left side by 2. So on the left side, it will say times 2. On the right side, it will say times 2. When you multiply and divide by the same number, you can cross them out because it just equals 1, and 1 times any number is itself. So we've got just D on the left, and on the right side, 2 times 2 is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and type 4 in the box. Says divided by 2, so we're going to do the opposite. We're going to multiply by 2. When you multiply both sides by 2, on the left side, your 2's cancel out, and on the right side, you've got 2 times 2, which is the answer 4. This one's going to be a little trickier because there's a decimal, but we're still just using inverse operations. So when I look at my problem, I can see on the right-hand side, I want the y by itself. Because it's squished together with the number 3, I know that means multiply 3 times y. So I'm going to go ahead and divide. I'm doing the opposite, and I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So in my calculator, I always do top divided by bottom. So 11.7 divided by 3 is going to be 3.9. So my answer is 3.9. I'm going to type that in the box, and we'll hit submit. So I'm going to clear my screen again as soon as it gives me the chance to. My computer's moving a little slow today. Okay. 2C, that means multiply. We're going to do the opposite and divide. Since I divided both sides by 2, that means I'm going to type 4.8 in my calculator, divided by 2, and I get 2.4. So in the box, I'm going to type 2.4. This says 3D equals 75. 3D is being multiplied. I want the D to stay, but I want the 3 to go. So 75 divided by 3. Once I type it in my calculator, I get 25. We've got m minus 12 minus 12. We're going to do the opposite, which is plus 12 on both sides. And when I do 15 plus 12, I get 27. So m equals 27. 6u is being multiplied. So we're going to do the opposite and divide. We're going to divide both sides by 6. So 6 divided by 6 is just 1. So that leaves us with the u on the left. 48 divided by 6 is an answer of 8. Ooh, this one's a little tricky. So I'm going to write this one out. It says q plus negative 60 equals negative 7. Anytime I see two signs next to each other, I like to simplify my equation. And in this case, you can kind of think plus and minus, it's the bad guy that wins. So the minus overpowers it. So instead of saying plus a negative 60, I'm going to say q minus 60. And that equals negative 7. Once you simplify that, it's pretty easy to see what the inverse is. I'm going to add 60 to both sides. If I borrow $7 from you and I pay you back $60, well, I paid off my debt, but I've got leftover money. So what happens is I actually have $53 left, and that is my answer. Let me go over to the box and type 53. Okay, so for this one, it's saying divided by 8. We're going to do the opposite, and that means that we're going to multiply by 8. So 4 times 8 is 32. We've got z plus 8 equals 57. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides because that's the opposite of plus 8 is minus 8. 57 minus 8 would be 49. So in the box, we will type 49. F minus 12 equals 687. Because it says minus 12, we're going to do the opposite and add 12 to both sides. So when I add them together, I get 699. So in the box, 699. Again, we're trying to get the u by itself. We're solving for u. It says minus 124, so we're going to add 124 to both sides. 380 plus 124 equals 504. Here's another example of the plus and the negative. So I'm going to write this one out. Remember, first I write it exactly as is. And you'll notice we have those two signs right next to each other. So I'm going to just basically cross off the plus sign, and it just says u minus 582. So I'm going to do the opposite and add 582 to both sides. Make sure whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. And then in my calculator, I've got 66 plus 582 is 648. So in that box, 648. I'm going to do the opposite of subtract 289, and I'm going to add 289 to both sides. So 533 plus 289 is 822. I'm solving for m. Because it says plus 187, I'm going to subtract 187. So I have 935 minus 187, and that gives me 748. Okay, here comes the challenge. So we've got some decimals, but we're still doing the inverse. We're still doing the opposite. So instead of minus 5.1, we're going to add 5.1 to both sides. 6.9 plus 5.1 gives me 12. So W equals 12. For V, right now it's saying divided by 3. So we're going to multiply by 3. We're going to multiply both sides by 3. So my 3's on the left cancel out. Then I've got a negative 3.5. And I'm going to multiply that by a positive 3. A negative times a positive is always a negative, and 3 times 3.5 is 10.5. So my answer is negative 10.5. They flipped it around so our variable is not on the left, but it still doesn't matter. We're still doing exactly what we have been doing. So I'm going to write this out because you'll notice we have a plus and a minus. So we want to make sure that we write this correctly. So 8.8 equals m, but instead of writing plus negative, I'm just going to write minus 10.6. I'm going to do the opposite of minus 10.6. I'm going to add 10.6 to both sides. And when I do that in my calculator, I'm going to type 8.8 plus 10.6, and I get 19.4. So I'm going to be typing 19.4 as my answer. 19.4. Right now it's telling me to divide G by 2, so I'm going to do the opposite and multiply. 3.1 times 2 is 6.2, which is my answer. Okay, looks like this is our last one. We're dividing by a -4, which means we're going to do the opposite and multiply by -4. So I've got negative 3.7 times a -4. A negative times a negative is always a positive, so my answer will be positive, and 3.7 times 4 is 14.8. 14.8. And there we go. We have mastered this skill. And it took us less than 10 minutes. Awesome. Okay, see you for the next skill.